everyone, we're here at the Open Source Summit. I'm here with the one and only Jono Bacon. Jono, how's it going?
It's going great, thank you.
And how has your conference experience been?
It's been fantastic. I love this for two reasons. One is I love just the Open Source Summit and seeing everybody. I've seen a lot of people I haven't seen in a long time. But also, this is the coolest venue because there's so much natural light. And being in an exhibition room where you can see the ocean is unusual for most of these conference venues. So yes, big fan.
Yeah, I've been seeing you, you attend a lot of open source summits. Why would that be? Why do you join the open source summits? What's your key takeaway, and what makes you happy when you attend open source summit?
It's just, for me, it's in the rotation. Every year I come to these for a couple of reasons. One is I mainly come for the people. I honestly don't really go to any of the sessions. I go to some if I see something that I'm particularly interested in. I spend most of my time in the hallway track, going around the exhibition hall, getting to see people, having meetings, having lunch with people, going out for drinks with people. It's all about reconnecting because, we spend so much time online in our lives, and it's nice to actually see people and continue to build your relationship with them. So there's some people here that I've known for 25 years, you know. So that's the main, and I find that the Open Source Summits are one of the main places where that happens. I also go to, All Things Open and KubeCon and some other places, but this is a fixture for me. So.
Yeah, because when I asked some people that why do you attend these events, the answer that I got was really nice, is because, well, everyone is here.
Yeah,
so
it's so true.
That's my understanding as well. I come here for networking, for people, because working remotely in front of the screen for so many hours, it's really nice to meet people in person.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of Open Source Summit, speaking about open source, we're talking about communities. Can I ask you a question around how do you define a community? What is a community to you? If someone asked me, what is a community, Jono? So what would you say?
So the way I look at it is that a community is, I describe it as a network of minds, right? So if you've got 50 people stood over there, and they're all interested in Kubernetes, right? That's 50 different brains with 50 different backgrounds and upbringings and different types of experience and different skills and perspectives. Each one of those brains has tried some things that have worked well and some of the things that haven't worked well. And when all of that lives in our own brains, we only benefit from it ourselves. To me, when you get all of that information out into the open in a way that people can consume, then you get this network effect. And it's profound. I mean, I think the reason why open source just exists in the first place and is so powerful in the first place is because it's not just people coming together to write code. I think that kind of devalues it. It's people coming from a million different perspectives and saying, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we solve this problem? We all have different things that we're passionate about. So that to me is the real power of a community.
Yeah, and when you're starting out a community, what's some of the key things to keep in mind?
So I think there's a couple of things. The first thing is you got to really know who your audience is. To me, the philosophy that underpins everything in a successful community is from a guy called Seth Godin, who's a fairly well-known marketing kind of leader. And he says, when you're in service of other people's success, good things happen to you. So when I think about, my career, and I'm sure it's the same with you and other people, you probably spend a whole bunch of your time just mentoring people and helping people. Yeah, and just being kind and being generous. And when you do that, good things happen to you. So when you create an environment where you know who your audience is and you want to help them, and the key thing is you identify what are their pain points, what are they struggling with. If you're building a community around front-end web development, right? There's kind of two different types of pain points. One is what I call narrow, which is cross-browser compatibility, implementing accessibility standards, dealing with external APIs, things like that.
Yeah.
But then the other is the broader things. It's there's been a bunch of tech layoffs and people are worried, they're scared. Or how do I work with different teams in a company? Or how do I stay up to date with all these different technologies? When you create an environment, a community where you keep adding value and solving those pain points, it becomes very compelling to people.
Yeah.
But it's got to be about value.
The problem I struggled with was I started my community it was close to a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a first world problem that it grew so fast that it was hard to manage.
Yep.
So my question is what are some of the tips that you can give for people who are looking to scale their communities? Because I've faced burnout pretty badly.
Yeah.
Because I was doing things on my own, which is a bad thing because if you want to scale communities, you have to give up control.
Yeah. Which is difficult.
Yeah. So ideally, someone wants to scale their community. how do they do that?
Yeah.
Following up on your previous answer.
So I think the first piece is to scale it. You've got to be like intentional about bringing value every week. And what I generally recommend is content, conversations, and carrots. I call it the 3 C's. So every week, a new piece of content that's solving those pain points, that's helping people to develop skills. Conversations is where you produce opportunities for people to engage and participate. Like if I, here at the Open Source Summit, if I went up to 20 random people and said, tell me your favorite book. I get 20 different books, a bunch of them I'd be interested in. That's value in itself, right? So if you kick off lots of these conversation starters where people start sharing their insight and their wisdom, starts getting people used to replying and posting. And then carrots is where you recognize and reward people and make them feel welcome. The key in scale is making people feel like they've got a personal relationship with the community leaders. So, you know, one of the things I do pretty much almost every day is with the communities that I work with is I just send short emails just saying, hey, I just noticed you did this thing. I really appreciate it. It's people like you that make our community really tick. So what we want to do is get visibility in what people are doing, and then lots and lots of individual reach out. And then the more you do that in a group setting, human beings mimic other human beings. So if you're a good leader, collaborative leader like that, then people start mimicking that behavior, and that's how you scale up. So.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it also makes you feel like you're being listened to.
Yeah.
And that your actions are not going in like that. It's always nice to be appreciated.
Yeah, you don't want to just be like filling in a survey
Yeah.
in how you interact with things.
That's my other question before I forget, now that you mentioned surveys. As a company, I know surveys are important. You know, you don't want to get users and clients or whatever. And even from a general public, for your roadmap or whatever, you need to just gather some information. But it's really hard to get people to fill surveys.
Yep.
How do you nail surveys, man?
So
as a company, not.
I'm pretty prolific with. I'm a big fan of Typeform, and I put Typeform surveys on almost everything.
So the platform you use has a big thing to do with it.
For me, it does, because I think that. There's a couple of challenges with surveys. One is getting them to fill it in.
Yeah, that's the biggest.
And secondly, where you use the survey. So, for example, a lot of people might run a meetup, and then they send a survey the following day, and the problem is that the following day you're out of the vibe of the meetup. So what you were feeling in that moment at the meetup, you don't feel anymore, because you've woken up, you're brushing your teeth, you're drinking a cup of coffee, you're on with your day. So I'm a big believer in tapping insight from your audience in the moment, right? So instead of doing a survey the day after a meetup, it's better to ask one question during the meetup, right? And there's all kinds of tools you can use for this. The thing I like to do is I always go with 3 questions, where I basically say, rate the value of whatever we just did out of 10. That's easy. And then you have two text boxes. One is, what could we have done that we could have improved? And then the other one was, what are the things that we did here that you found really valuable and useful? 3 questions, 3 minutes, and you won't get a ton of people filling it in, but you get enough people where it gives you enough insight. So every single time, for example, I have my community leadership core accelerator, and I bring the group together every 2 weeks. And this is where we kind of learn and build our communities together. After every huddle, I do a survey, 3 questions, and I get a ton of feedback. And every week, I then iterate and iterate and iterate. So I put them on everything that you do. What you shouldn't do, in my mind, is don't say, "Oh, if you fill in our survey, we'll send you a gift card," because then you totally skew the results. And people will often do that because they're like, "I need someone to fill in my."
A lot of people do that.
Yeah, I think.
So you're saying that's not good?
I think no one should do that.
But why though?
I think the reason why is because then your survey is not objective. It's like if I go up to someone and say, "Hey, would you be my friend?" And they're like, "Well, it depends. Are we going to get on?" But if I go up to you and I say, "If I give you $50,000, will you be my friend tonight?" You probably say yes. So the minute you bring in any kind of like monetary incentive, it skews the data. So to me, if people aren't filling in your survey and you're using money or rewards to try and get them to fill in the survey, the reason why they're not filling in your survey is because your survey sucks. So we need to fix the survey not sucking and not band-aid it with a reward.
And how would you fix the survey?
So what I would do is I would, first of all, set the context of the survey. The problem with the survey is that it adds no value to the individual. So like if you join one of my community leadership core huddles and I say, "Hey, would you fill in the survey?" It's just 3 questions. You don't get anything out of that. You lose your time on that, right? But if I say to you, instead of I saying like, "Oh, if you fill in my survey, it would be helpful," if I say, "Look, the only way in which I can make these 90-minute sessions valuable for everybody is if I understand bluntly what everybody needs, right? And the only way I can understand what people need is through conversations. And at the end of every one of these sessions, I want to tap into your insight, tap into your perspectives. This is going to make it better for you. What it does then is it frames the survey as a tool that's going to be used to improve your experience. So then you're more likely to fill in the survey. The problem is most people say, hey, we'd love to get your thoughts, fill the survey in. And then there's like, 20 questions.
Yeah.
3 questions.
No, that makes sense.
So that's how I like to think about it.
Yeah. No,
I might be doing it all wrong though. I mean, this is how I approach it.
But that's not the worst part. The worst part is I got an email. It said that if you get a demo of our application, we'll pay you. Can you believe that?
Oh my God. It's so desperate.
What kind of marketing is that?
I'm a big believer that...
It's like reverse marketing.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that that something not happening or failure is information, right? So I'll give you an example. There's a client of mine, and what I ask them to do is every 2 weeks to put together a progress report of what they're doing in their community. I ask everyone in my Accelerate X to do this as well. And it takes less than 10 minutes to put together. It takes less than 5 minutes for the person to read. And it's a really intentionally useful tool for building relationships between different teams in a company. So I asked my group, and I said, look, I'm going to ask you a vulnerable question. It was the Zoom gallery view. And I was like, everybody, if you've shipped a progress report to somebody, just one, put your hand up. And if you haven't, don't put your hand up. And there's no shame if you don't put your hand up. Most people didn't put their hand up. And to me, that was useful information because I was like, okay, great. They've had a month and a half to do this. There's a reason why they're not doing it. So then we turned it into a breakout discussion. And I was like, okay, let's talk through, like, why aren't you doing it? And it was primarily lack of time. So then we talked through solutions for that. Like, an easy solution is just put something in your calendar once every 2 weeks, 30 minutes, and you bring you and your colleagues together and you say, okay, let's just knock this out in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So now we've got an intentional. So the fact that it didn't happen was useful information. So that's why if somebody puts together a survey and no one's filling it out, to me that's useful information. It's like, well, why is that? Is there too many questions? Are we not explaining the reason why? Like, you get a lot of people starting the survey and they don't finish it, you've got too many questions.
Yeah.
If they don't start it, then you're not communicating the value of why they should fill it in.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. So
Yeah.
All right. Second last question is around more around communities that are formed by companies. So there are many companies, they form communities.
Yep.
But as an individual, me personally, I'd rather be involved in a community that is like not behind a vendor. I don't know, just like I personally love communities like of all types, be that vendor or non-vendors. But I know people who are like, okay, this is a company's community. They're going to probably pitch their products or whatever.
Yep.
And same thing with, let's say, YouTube channels. People are more likely to connect with like a YouTube channel of an individual like Kunal Kushwaha or whatever, rather than like a vendor company or something like that. So my idea is, and also one more thing I struggle with is engaging people on Slack. I think Slack is dying for communities. I don't know if it is, but my question to you is, companies who are forming communities, how can they do it? How can they nail it?
Yeah. So I think you raise a good point around the relationship of a company in a community, and I think it really depends on the view that the community member has of that company. So I think there are some companies where there is a high level of trust that is formed. So the fact that a company is building a community is a good thing. And I'd include GitLab and GitHub as two notable, and HashiCorp as 3 examples of that. There are some companies that suck at that because they're like, how can this company doesn't care about us? They're just using this as some tacky marketing tactic, right? So to me, I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with a company building a community around it. And I think one of the challenges that open source has to deal with is I think there is an anti-company sentiment in parts of the open source community that is honestly complete ignorance. It's ignorant. Some people just reject company. They assume that any company that they've got bad intentions. And I think that is a stupid concept. It's really stupid. I think there are some companies that have got bad intentions, but to make that a broad statement, I think is a really bad thing to say. So to me, it's all about setting the expectation that, like, I'll give you an example. There's a company called HackerOne, and the guy who's the CEO of HackerOne is called Martin Mikos. He used to run MySQL. And I've known Martin for years. He joined HackerOne just as I was starting consulting. So when I wrote a blog post saying I'm start consulting, he emailed me and said, hey, could you come and help us out? I remember when he joined HackerOne, he goes into the office and he said to everybody, I don't care whether you are a junior staff member or an intern or whether you're an executive, every single one of you is going to have a relationship with our community. And we're going to have a real relationship. We're not going to pretend that everything's perfect, because it isn't. We want to have an honest, vulnerable relationship with our community so we can learn and we can get better. And they built an amazing relationship with their community because they were intentional about that. And that to me is the most important thing. So go about the community building, but then if you have that, you actually build amazing, like GitLab did that. GitLab were a wonderful example of that, you know. So when GitLab melted down in 2017, when they had like a bad update, the community wrapped around and it became HugOps because they had built that trust with them. So
yeah, speaking of relationships, there's also one more thing I'd like to get your views on.
Yeah.
Which is many companies have their ambassador programs.
Yeah.
How do you nail that?
Yeah, ambassador programs are tricky because it's like a structured contribution model.
Yeah.
And I think the way in which you nail it is you make, first of all, I think of it as like a box. There's an input and there's an output. And you want real clarity on the people you want to come into the box and what your expectations are of output of the box. So if you ask people to come into your ambassador program and you say, like, we're going to level with you, like, this is work, right? But if you come in and this is what we expect of you, and we're going to support you and we're going to invest in you, and you can offer them a reason for them to do that, like career development, mentoring, skills development, whatever it might be, then you'll get great output if you're intentional about the inputs and the outputs. The problem with some companies, they basically say, here's our ambassador program, and it's like, anyone can sign up to be an ambassador and just kind of go out there and spread the word. It's like, it's not good enough. Like, you've got to make it an actual program. But the thing is it requires an elevated level of like personal engagement. Like opensource.com, that's run by Red Hat, they, the vast majority of their content, I believe still, is produced by community members. And, Jason Hibbets and Ricky Ensley and Jen White Hugo built this amazing community. And I'm probably missing off some folks like Brian. But what they did is they really focused on, they made everybody feel like every article that they produced was very relevant to the success. And people just lined up to contribute to them. So that to me is the most important thing.
Red Hat was my first open source contribution. So, yeah,
really?
They're everywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
It was my first freshman year. And it's really interesting because it was a big project, complex. It's the Kubernetes Java client.
Yep.
And I only knew Java and stuff. So they were really welcoming in terms of like helping out and stuff. All right. Thanks a lot for your time, Jono. I have
Thank
just
you.
one last question.
Yeah.
You said you went to India and you love Indian food. So what's your favorite Indian food?
Oh my goodness. Good question. I mean, I like a lot of what you probably characterize as being typically Western things like chicken tikka masalas and things like that. I've had, I think it's called Fal once, which was this unbelievably brutally hot kind of like Vindaloo plus kind of thing. But I love like naan and kind of sag paneer and stuff like that. Yeah, I love all Indian food.
Amazing. Well,
it's so good.
Yeah, hopefully if you're ever in India, as we were talking about a few minutes ago.
I'd love to come.
Love to. Yeah.
I just need a reason to go. So.
Right, well, thanks, Jono. And yeah, appreciate you giving the time. And if you want to check out Jono's work and everything, I'll leave all of these in the description below. But yeah, needs no introduction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thanks so much, John.
Cheers. Cheers.